Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that feels good because that's what we all want. We want to feel good. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. Amy will be joining us after the commercial break. Today, she's going to be educating us about depression. What is it? Who is afflicted by it? How do you get it? And how do you avoid it? Remember, health is the first wealth, so stick around. But before we go any further, I do want to take just a moment and remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email those directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. You don't need to suffer and try to figure it out all on your own. There are answers and solutions and ways to get unstuck and move forward powerfully. I want to remind you too that you can visit me at my website, FletcherEllingson.com. I've got all sorts of free resources there for you to check out. Get a copy of my free ebook, take the happiness quiz, and get a bird's eye view of how your life is going. And I'll personally send you feedback on the results. And you can also listen to my podcast there. It's a great way to stay in this personal development conversation. Now, let's take a minute to read an email question. It says, "Dear Fletcher, I have a big decision to make. I have an opportunity to move and take a new position at work. It'll be better pay, but will require more hours, frequent travel, and more responsibility. So much about it sounds good, but I worry that I don't have the experience necessary to really do a good job. And if I don't perform well, then I risk getting demoted or possibly fired. I'm also worried about being away from my family so much. I'll be traveling twice a month for a total of 8 days. We have elementary age kids. My wife works part-time while they're in school. It would mean extra responsibility for her while I'm away. The position I have now is fine and decent money, but if I stay with that, will I have another opportunity for advancement in the future? I'm really torn about what to do." Signed, JW. So first of all, JW, thanks for reaching out. I want to remind you that reaching out is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of strength. And that, my friend, means you are strong. I get that you have a big decision to make, and it feels like there's a lot riding on it. The first thing I want to say is, isn't it great? Isn't this really cool? Isn't this what you wanted? To be noticed, to be considered for more responsibility, more pay, more leadership, more growth, more opportunity. It's exciting that this has come your way, so congratulations. Now, I can't tell you what to do, but I will say this. If you knew for certain that your wife could handle it and that things would work out, would you do it? If you knew that you would perform well, despite some challenges, even excel, would you do it? If you knew that this would provide interesting and challenging times, would you do it? If you knew that it was going to build character and allow you to develop and contribute at a higher level to your family and your community and your job, would you do it? And if you knew that you could stay in touch via Zoom or FaceTime or phone and that your kids would adjust to it, would you do it? And if you knew that it was going to work out, then would you do it? You see, frequently when we have a big decision to make, it can feel scary because we don't feel we have all the answers. We're worried about making the wrong decision. And I really want you to hear this. I want everyone out there that's listening to this to really hear this. We rarely have all the answers. So put that aside. We rarely know what the future holds, so put it aside. You see, there are no right or wrong decisions. There are simply decisions that we make, and then we make them work for our life. I'll say that again. There are no right or wrong decisions. There are simply decisions that we make, and then we make them work for our life. So what there is to do now, JW, is to trust. And that's usually what is missing. And it's usually why we feel so squirrely, because we're not practiced at trusting that life will work out for us. So I encourage you to step into trust. Trust that life has been working out for you to get to this place. Trust that life is working out for you right now. And trust that no matter what your decision is, life will continue to work out for you. You see, when we make a powerful decision to trust, even when we don't know how things will work out, it can bring calm and confidence to our life. So my advice to you, trust and decide powerfully. I know you can do this, and I believe in you. Hey, stick around. We're gonna have a very important conversation with Amy when we get back. We'll see you soon. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Amy Ellingson. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Good. Hey, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about depression.
Serious conversation.
Yes.
And it's serious ramifications.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's dive into it, okay?
Okay.
First of all, let's get some clarity. Is depression an illness, or is it just like a temporary feeling?
Well, I mean, the word is used for both of those situations. I mean, there's a difference between feeling depressed or having depression after something happens for a few days or something like that. There's a difference between that and being diagnosed with depression. And usually when you're diagnosed with depression, it's actually a diagnosis of major depression, like initial episode or recurrent episode. And usually symptoms have to be, well, not usually, symptoms have to be persistent over at least a 2-week period of time, but usually longer than that. And there are certain criteria that have to be met for us to make that decision that is depression, and those would include like a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure in things, change in your appetite. Some people eat more, some people eat less, sleep disturbance, some people sleep all the time, some people can't sleep, feeling tired or low energy, a sense of hopelessness or worthlessness, impaired concentration, and then thoughts about dying, either actively wanting to commit suicide or just kind of thoughts of, I'd be better off dead kind of feeling.
Got it. So it's different than just feeling upset, sad, disappointed, obviously.
Right. I mean, it permeates their life to the point where it affects their functionality in relationships and at work and just dealing with life. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And people frequently with depression will get this tunnel vision that that's kind of all they can see, and they tend to see more and more stuff that is part of their depression, and it can be really hard to cope. It can be hard to manage just with daily things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may or may not have an answer for this, but so let's say somebody goes through a breakup, and they feel really upset, sad, disappointed, uncertain.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last long. But they might say, I feel really depressed. Is that different than the long-term depression that you're
Yeah, we would
about?
call that that'd be diagnosed an adjustment disorder with a depressed mood. So we would call that technically that's called an adjustment disorder. Anytime there's a big change, we have these feelings and these reactions. But usually after a breakup or something upsetting like that, you're gonna be upset, you're gonna eventually move through it. So, in the beginning, right, yeah, you can't eat well, you can't sleep, all that kind of stuff. These same kind of feelings that I talked about, but you obviously slowly come out of it in a matter of weeks usually.
So when you get a diagnosis of depression, it's just you're not coming out of it, you're not moving forward. Got it. So how commonly do you see this in your practice? I
see it all the time. I know the statistics when we looked this up said it affects one group said about 7%, and then someone else said maybe up to 10-ish% of the U.S. population over age 18. It seems like more to me. I just feel like there's a lot of people that I refill medications for or they have depression or anyway. So it's really common, and we actually, when we see patients just for random things, not necessarily if you came in for an earache, but say you came in just to refill your high blood pressure medication, we screen everybody with two questions that talk about are they feeling little interest or pleasure in doing things, or feeling down, depressed, or hopeless. And if they say yes to those, then they get another questionnaire we call a PHQ-9, which kind of objectively gives us a score for someone's depression. So, I mean, like we kind of mentioned, everyone at some point feels sadness or depression, whether it's after someone dies or an animal dies, a person dies, or a major change, or a divorce, a move, a breakup, all those kinds of things. And it's just, it's different when you have a period of depression that's different than having depression. Yeah.
And I think it's good to know too, like when you do go through that transition after a breakup or a divorce or a move, that a lot of those feelings, those are natural feelings.
Of course. I mean, they say like a normal grieving period after you have a loved one die is 6 months. I mean, it's a lot longer than people maybe think. And as long as someone is continually moving forward through their grief and their life, they're able to keep either working or their relationships up, then it's just normal grieving.
Yeah, good to hear that, because some people may think that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. What about children? Because when I think of people having depression, I always think, well, it's adults, but can children get depressed?
Yeah, children definitely can get depressed. Maybe, I think that the number we found was like 2.5% of children. Usually children would be like less than maybe 13, less than 12. I haven't seen it very commonly, unless it was kind of in reaction to something big that's happened, and usually that's been able to be worked through with some counseling. Teenagers, it's closer to maybe about 8%. I see that a lot. I definitely have seen a big increase since when, after COVID, when kids were at home for so long and a lot of the social structure is not available to them. We've seen more of that, definitely. And children, just like in everything, they can be a little harder to read. They don't have the language skills. They don't verbalize their feelings like adults do. They don't know how to do that. They also, even teenagers, they don't know that it's depression. They don't know how to say what they're feeling. And so what they start doing is they just start isolating themselves. And adults sometimes just think, I just saw a case earlier this week where the parents well, they just want to be in their room all the time, and they think that's a normal teenager thing to do. But it frequently is not a normal teenager thing to do, to want to be in your room all the time. I frequently then see those kids and they're feeling depressed or they're feeling anxious, and they get more and more isolated. So children and teenagers don't have the verbal skills to tell us how they're feeling as well.
That brings up an interesting point. You mentioned that children may not have the ability to articulate what's going on for them. But I would imagine it can be the same for adults too, like who are maybe not practiced at talking about their feelings. They may. Do you ever get people that come in and they don't think they're depressed, but they're just like feeling like a lackluster in life? And
I definitely have seen that, but I feel like with adults it's a little less common. I have seen that where people don't necessarily know, and it's like, gosh, do you think you might be depressed? And they fill out the form and they are. But I see that less often. I think most adults kind of, maybe just because it's out there and the internet is out there and they've talked to someone at least and they think, I might be depressed. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay, very interesting. Well, hey, let's take a quick break. We'll be back because this I really find this topic fascinating, and I think it's very relevant, pertinent, and it's a lot of it going on. So it's a good conversation to have. So stay with us. We're going to talk more about it when we return. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. So glad you're here joining us in this conversation. We're here with Amy. We're talking about depression today. She's educating us, answering some questions here. So thanks for doing that. Next question for you. Is depression, or can depression be hereditary?
It definitely can. I didn't look that one up as far as the statistics on it, but for sure, several different types of mental illness are hereditary, and depression is definitely one of those. So if it does tend to run in your family, it doesn't mean that you're going to be depressed, but it may mean that you're more likely to suffer from it, for sure. Yeah.
So what are the steps that are taken after someone has been diagnosed with depression?
Yeah, so if someone comes in the office and they meet the criteria and we talk about it, usually we talk about, things in their life, how to improve what's going on with maybe their sleep or their diet or their connections, exercise, social contact, that kind of thing. And then also counseling is almost always recommended. Studies have shown that a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, can even be more effective sometimes than medication for mild to moderate depression. And so I always recommend that. Counseling is a really hard thing to find around here, especially where I work up in Okanagan County. It's very difficult, so that can be really frustrating to get counseling care, and then also to get with a counselor that you really want to work with and you trust and have a rapport with. And then medication is definitely a possibility depending on the severity of the patient's symptoms, how long they've been going on, their age, their other health issues, the other medications they're taking, their personal preferences. Sometimes if it seems like, oh gosh, maybe you haven't been doing this or that, or maybe you can start talking to someone, we might do some of that and then have them come back. And if they're not better, then start medication.
Okay. So let's talk about medication.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about it except the one thing that sticks in my mind is Prozac.
Right. Like I didn't like that either. I can't remember when that came out. Maybe in the 90s. I don't know. But it was one of the first in the class of SSRIs, which are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And they're the mainstay of treatment that we have for depression and anxiety. They're actually used for both depression and anxiety. So sometimes when people have anxiety disorder, they're placed on the same medication, and sometimes it can be confusing. They're like, this is for depression, but it's for both. Since Prozac, there have been several other medications that are in that class of SSRIs. And then there are also medications like Wellbutrin, Effexor, duloxetine, and all of them essentially affect the amount of these chemicals in your brain, like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, and they all lead to improved mood and better coping and less anxiety.
Got it. Yeah, because it's really addressing the chemicals that are happening in your head.
Yeah,
right?
what's pretty interesting is we already have like a whole pharmacy in our brain. We have all these chemicals already, and then these medications actually just work on usually causing an increase of that neuropeptide in between the nerves in the brain. So we already have it all there. It just alters the amount that's available for at the synapses.
Yeah, that's so wild.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So is there any worry about coming off of those drugs? I've heard that they can be challenging to come off of.
Yeah, and I get that a lot from patients too, like, gosh, I don't want to start this because I'll never be able to come off of it. And personally, I haven't really seen that in any of my patients. I have heard of some people having a really hard time coming off the medication. Usually what I have seen is someone can be weaned off usually in a matter of weeks or maybe a month, and then they do fine. Again, I've heard of a few people that has not been the case, but for the most part it's been okay. And I think that there are patients who definitely are on medication for their kind of whole adult lives. There also are people who maybe were on medication when they were working, and then their life situation has totally changed. They're retired, they are in a different marriage or whatever it may be, and they're able to come off the medication. So I always try to tell people, listen, let's just we usually try to give it a year. Let's just give it a year, work on things, do the counseling, work on, creating whatever it is in your life to kind of create some more balance, and then see what happens. And we can always try to come off and see what happens.
Yeah, okay. So another question for you. This is not on our question sheet, but is there anything that we can do to avoid this, or to not that it is you're destined to get it, but is there a way of living that would allow us to navigate and avoid depression?
I don't know the answer to that necessarily. I don't think there's anything that's been definitively studied to avoid depression, like being diagnosed with depression. I mean, I know there's been studies on focusing on gratitude and doing daily gratitudes and gratitude journals. And I mean, if you're someone who was not depressed, we're not trying to fix depression with these other things, but I think, focusing on gratitude, having personal connections, so having social connections is also a determinant of a healthy mental health. Good sleep, good exercise, good nutrition, avoiding overuse of alcohol or other substances that can make you feel depressed. So all those things kind of like healthy social and physical and kind of spiritual, having a connection with gratitude or a sense of something larger than yourself. All of those have been shown to kind of lead to a better sense of well-being. I don't know if they've ever done a study on those people have less like depression.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is because it seems like that depression is like it kind of sounds to my layperson ears like it might be a chemical imbalance, and then you bring medications in to stimulate more of the feel-good chemicals. And so if we're doing feel-good things in our life, I'm not saying this is a cure-all or a fix-all, but it just seems like, could we help elevate those chemical levels just by a lifestyle?
Well, I definitely think that you could. I wouldn't say that people, there are definitely patients I've seen that they feel like everything is going right in their life and everything seems to be fine, but yet they're feeling depression or yet they're feeling anxiety. So even though you're doing all that stuff, it doesn't mean that the chemicals are going to follow suit. So I think that in general, doing all those things is great for longevity and again, good, healthy physical and mental health, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to not be diagnosed with depression.
Okay. Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
We ran out of a few.
We ran out of time, but I think it's a really good conversation to have. And if anyone thinks that they're dealing with that, definitely see a healthcare provider and have that conversation. But now it's time to get out there. It's time to be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something to offer this world, and we believe in you.